Well, the Dead Sea is a natural wonder, a biblical landmark, and a mineral treasure. But this unique body of water is getting smaller.
The sun has not yet cleared the mountains to the east, but the first light of morning has already begun its quiet work. It spills across the jagged cliffs of Moab, washing them in soft amber, and stretches toward the still waters below. The Dead Sea lies silent, its surface smooth as polished metal, reflecting the pale blue of the waking sky. From a distance, it looks eternal, unchanged for millennia, untouched by the passing of empires and ages. There is a stillness here unlike any other body of water on earth. No waves lap the shore. No wind ripples the surface. No sound of seabirds circles overhead. The air is heavy with the mineral tang of salt, so thick it settles on the tongue. The ground beneath your feet crunches with a crust of crystallized sodium, sharp and brittle, glittering like shards of broken glass under the sun's first rays. For thousands of years, this place has been known as the sea where nothing lives. No fish could survive in its choking salinity. No plant could root along its scorched banks. The waters here hold 10 times more salt than the oceans, so dense that swimmers float without effort, so hostile to life that it became a symbol of finality, the very name. Dead Sea, a verdict that seemed permanent. Ancient travelers wrote of its eerie silence, its lifeless shores. The Romans called it Mare Mortuum, the Sea of Death. In the days of the Bible, it was a place of judgment, lying near the ruins of Sodom and Gomorrah, where fire and brimstone fell from heaven. It was a reminder that God's justice is certain, and that His word stands through the centuries. And yet, here we are, in the very place that for millennia has been a tomb for water, watching something happen that should not be possible. At the shoreline, the salt crust breaks to reveal narrow channels of flowing water. Not the heavy, bitter brine of the sea itself, but water so fresh you could drink it. In these small pools, sunlight glints off scales. Fish. Living, darting fish. Their quick, silver movements break the mirrored surface, leaving ripples that seem to carry a whisper through the morning air. Reeds sway in the breeze. Green patches of marsh grass spread along the shore. It feels almost defiant, as if life itself has decided to return to a place it was once banished from. But this is not just an environmental curiosity. This is something more. Something written about thousands of years ago in a vision so strange and so specific that many thought it was only a poetic metaphor. A Jewish priest and prophet named Ezekiel lived during one of the darkest chapters of Israel's history. The temple in Jerusalem had been destroyed. The people were scattered in exile. The land that once flowed with milk and honey lay in ruins. To a people who had lost hope, God gave Ezekiel a vision. In that vision, the prophet saw a trickle of water flowing out from under the threshold of the temple in Jerusalem. It moved eastward, down into the desert, gaining depth and strength until it became a river so wide no one could cross. Wherever this river flowed, life sprang up in abundance. Along its banks grew trees whose leaves never withered, whose fruit never failed. The waters teemed with fish of every kind. And this river flowed all the way to the Dead Sea, and made it alive again. Where the river flows, God told him, everything will live. To the people of Ezekiel's day, such a thing was impossible. The Dead Sea could not be revived. It was death itself. And yet, here in the early years of the 21st century, we stand at its edge and see life returning. Over the past decade, scientists and photographers have documented the appearance of freshwater springs along the receding shoreline. These springs form small lagoons where fish, real, living fish, swim freely. Birds flock to hunt in these waters. Plants grow in the soil that was once white and dead with salt. Some will say this is only a natural consequence of human activity, the Jordan River's flow has been diverted for agriculture, lowering the Dead Sea's water level, exposing underground aquifers. And yes, those factors are real. But here is the deeper truth. Prophecy does not need to ignore natural processes. The God who created the laws of nature can use them to fulfill his promises. And this promise is not small. Ezekiel's prophecy does not end with fish in a few shoreline pools. It speaks of a complete transformation, of the Dead Sea filled with life, of fishermen casting nets from shore to shore, of abundance where there was only desolation. And this vision is connected to an even larger one. Another prophet, Zechariah, wrote of a day when the Messiah would reign from Jerusalem, and living waters would flow out from the city, half to the Dead Sea, half to the Mediterranean, in summer and winter alike. For this to happen, the very landscape would have to change. Valleys would open, rivers would flow, deserts would bloom. It is a vision of creation renewed under the rule of the King. Isaiah spoke of this same renewal. Deserts bursting into bloom, the parched ground becoming pools, the wilderness singing with joy. The Apostle John saw its final fulfillment in the book of Revelation, where a river of the water of life flows from the throne of God, bringing healing to the nations. And so, as we stand here at the edge of the Dead Sea, watching the impossible happen, the question is not whether this is prophecy being fulfilled. The question is this the beginning? Could these fish, these springs, these green shoots be the first ripples of a wave that will one day sweep across the earth, transforming not only landscapes but hearts, not only seas but nations? The Dead Sea was a symbol of finality, but life has returned. And the God who can bring life back to a sea can bring life back to you. The first light of morning spills across the mountains of Moab, washing the horizon in gold. The air is still, the kind of stillness that feels like the earth is holding its breath. Beneath the cliffs, the Dead Sea lies like a sheet of molten glass, its surface catching every color the rising sun can offer: burnished amber, deep turquoise, silver that almost blinds the eyes. There is a strange, heavy silence here. No waves, no gulls crying, no smell of seaweed. The air carries instead the sharp tang of salt, so dense it coats the lips. For thousands of years, this place was a grave for water, so heavy with minerals it could not bear life. It was the biblical Sea of the Arabah, the salt sea into which the Jordan River flowed, but from which nothing escaped except through evaporation into the desert air. Travelers through the ages described it with awe and dread, a place where birds avoided the water, where no fish swam, where even the banks seemed cursed with lifelessness. In Scripture, it was a marker of judgment, near the plains where Sodom and Gomorrah once stood, a reminder of sin's destruction and God's justice. But today, something is stirring along the shoreline. Where the salt crust once crunched underfoot like broken glass, marsh grass pushes through. Pools of clear water mirror the sky, and in those pools, impossibly, undeniably, fish dart and shimmer. It is as if the sea itself has begun to breathe again. And I want you to pause with me here. Because what you are seeing is not just an environmental oddity. It is the quiet beginning of something that was written in the pages of Scripture thousands of years ago. The death of the sea. The Dead Sea's salinity is nearly 10 times that of the oceans. In ancient times, it was known as a place of preservation and desolation. Its waters could mummify fruit, leaving it perfectly shaped but utterly lifeless. No fisherman cast nets here. No child learned to swim in its dense, bitter waters. It was a body of water so hostile to life that Dead Sea was more than a name, it was a verdict. Ezekiel, a prophet living during Israel's exile in Babylon around 2,500 years ago, knew this reality well. To his people, The Dead Sea was an unchangeable fact of the landscape, just as unchangeable as the ruins of their destroyed temple in Jerusalem. And yet, God gave him a vision that shattered the boundaries of what they thought possible. Ezekiel's vision. Ezekiel 47 begins quietly. I saw water coming out from under the threshold of the temple toward the east. A trickle at first, so small it would seem insignificant. But as Ezekiel follows this water, it deepens. Ankle-deep becomes knee-deep. Knee-deep becomes waist-deep. And then it becomes a river no one can cross. Everywhere this water flows, life explodes into being. Trees line its banks, trees whose leaves never wither, whose fruit never fails. The waters teem with many kinds of fish, so abundant that fishermen spread their nets from En-Gedi to En-Eglaim, 2 locations along the shore of the Dead Sea itself. And Ezekiel hears the voice. Where the river flows, everything will live. To the people of his time, this was unthinkable. The Dead Sea was not just salty, it was death itself. And yet, Ezekiel saw it filled with life. Modern science. Now, in our time, we have begun to see the faint outlines of this vision in reality. In recent years, freshwater springs have appeared along parts of the Dead Sea's receding shoreline. These springs feed small lagoons where fish swim freely. Reeds sway in the breeze. Birds nest and hunt here. Israeli scientists have documented tilapia in these pools, fish that would never survive in the Dead Sea's main body. Satellite images reveal narrow ribbons of green stretching along places that were once barren salt flats. Skeptics will point out the causes. Dropping water levels due to diversion of the Jordan River for agriculture, exposure of underground aquifers, geological shifts creating new springs. All true. But I remind you, God often works through natural processes to accomplish supernatural purposes. A trickle becomes a stream. A stream becomes a river. A river transforms the land. That is how prophecy unfolds. Slowly, quietly, then suddenly. Zechariah's expansion. Centuries after Ezekiel, the prophet Zechariah saw another layer of this mystery. He spoke of a day when the Messiah would reign from Jerusalem, and living water will flow out from Jerusalem, half to the eastern sea and half to the western sea, in summer and in winter. Zechariah 14 verse 8. This is no seasonal flood. This is a continual flow, eastward to the Dead Sea, westward to the Mediterranean. But here's the astonishing thing. Jerusalem is over 2,400 feet above sea level. For water to flow in both directions year-round would require a reshaping of the land itself. Something only an act of God could accomplish. Zechariah connects this event to a cosmic moment. The Lord will be king over the whole earth. On that day there will be one Lord, and his name the only name. 14:9. So the return of life to the Dead Sea may not be the end of the prophecy. It may be the opening act of a transformation that will reach from Jerusalem to the ends of the earth. Isaiah's desert blossoms. Isaiah adds yet another piece to the puzzle. In chapter 35 he writes, The desert and the parched land will be glad, the wilderness will rejoice and blossom. Water will gush forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. Look around modern Israel today. The Negev desert, once barren, now bursts with crops, thanks to human ingenuity, yes, but also in places untouched by irrigation, where wildflowers and reeds now grow along new freshwater flows. Near the Dead Sea, plants root themselves where only salt crust once lay. Isaiah's prophecy is more than botany. It is a picture of hope. Just as God can make the desert bloom, He can restore the most barren heart. Revelation's river. The final vision comes from the Apostle John in Revelation 22. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. This river doesn't just heal the Dead Sea, it heals the nations. On each side grows the tree of life, whose leaves are for the healing of the nations. No more curse. No more death. From Ezekiel's trickle to Zechariah's living waters to Isaiah's blooming desert to John's eternal river, we see one unbroken story of restoration. Science and significance. Scientists explain the Dead Sea's transformation with geology, hydrology, and climate data. And they are correct. Freshwater springs do appear when shorelines recede. Underground aquifers do break through. Climate shifts do alter rainfall. But here is the question. If God created the natural world, why should we not expect His prophetic word to unfold through natural processes? When the Red Sea parted, it may have been aided by wind and tide, but it was still the hand of God. The springs at the Dead Sea are not just geology. They are reminders that God can reverse even the most final-seeming verdicts. The prophetic arc. When you connect these scriptures, a pattern emerges. Ezekiel, life returning to the Dead Sea. Zechariah, living waters from Jerusalem to both seas. Isaiah, deserts blooming with joy. Revelation, the eternal river of life. We are watching the first three begin to glimmer in our time. The fourth awaits its day. The urgency. Jesus told His followers to watch for the signs of His coming. Not to speculate recklessly, but to remain alert. The return of life to the Dead Sea is not just an environmental curiosity, it is a prophetic signpost. If one sign is in motion, others may not be far behind. And so I ask you, if the words of Ezekiel are coming to pass before our eyes, how close are we to the reign of the Messiah described by Zechariah? How close to the blooming deserts of Isaiah in full? How close to the eternal river of Revelation? Final call. The Dead Sea was a picture of hopelessness, unchangeable, lifeless, final. And yet life has returned. If God can do this for a sea, He can do it for a soul. The same God who said, "Where the river flows, everything will live," is still speaking today. Perhaps what we are seeing now is just the first ripple of a much greater wave, one that will sweep from Jerusalem to the ends of the earth, bringing life, healing, and the reign of the King. And when that day comes, the question will not be whether you knew the signs. The question will be, were you ready?